What goes good with great 3D? Great movies that 3D enhances. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Entrepreneur. Welcome to my media channel, and this is the one. This is the one that you were all waiting for. We got through the top 10 worst Blu-ray 3Ds, both for good movies and bad movies. We talked about the top 10 best 3D movies that were maybe not as good as they could have been. And at the end of that video, I talked about, well, really stuttered because I was getting a little fatigued after making so many videos, but I talked about how, yeah, great 3D can enhance a bad movie, but it's still not a good movie. It's still bad, or it's average, or it's not that exciting. And the best way to sell 3D to the public has always been great 3D with great movies. And we definitely want to talk about the great movies that the 3D made even better. Now, in my opinion, all the movies that I am about to show to you on this episode, if you have not seen these movies in 3Ds, with all due respect, I kind of feel like you haven't really seen them. I'm not saying you can't enjoy them not in 3D. You obviously can. But to see them in 3D and to see them in 2D is like watching two completely different movies. You're getting very different experiences. And so I believe that these are the movies that you should be seeking out in 3D. And what's interesting about this list is that this was by far the hardest list to make, because I actually have so many great 3D movies that this could have easily been like a top 20 list, and we still would have had like a dozen left over for honorable mentions. So even though the original video we did for this is a little outdated, make sure to watch it because there's some big differences between the two. Some movies have clearly been removed, but some of those movies are still great 3D experiences. So I want to make sure that you, especially if you have a 3D TV, are buying the great ones and kind of saving the bad ones for some other day or not at all. With that down, let's start with the top 10 list. And at number 10, we've got one that's going to make you definitely raise your eyebrow because you probably have not heard of this movie. We have Cave of Forgotten Dreams. Now, this is a Werner Herzog documentary about an ancient cave that they discovered, and they film these old paintings and they find these old artifacts in these old cave. This seems like it would be an odd choice. Like, really, a G-rated documentary from Werner Herzog? Like, why is this something I need to see in 3D? And here's the thing. This is proof that you don't need to be whiz-banging with special effects all the time, or you have to have massive explosions. Just the simple idea that you can take a 3D camera and go into an ancient cave, a cave that you will never ever in your life get to go into, and yet it's there and it feels real. It feels like you could touch, the ceiling. It's kind of almost hard to explain why this is so good in 3D, but this shows just this shows one of the advantages of 3D in the sense that when they go into this cave, it's like you're actually there. You're in the cave with them. It's not just on the screen. It's coming out of the screen. You can reach out and touch it. And they are, in a sense, bringing you into this cave, and you are seeing the unique history of this cave, and you are experiencing it in a way that you could not normally experience it as, because it's a sacred place at this point and tourists can't go there for obvious reasons. It's also very dangerous to go there. So I think Cave of Forgotten Dreams is... this is good proof that 3D really can be used for a lot more than what people typically think of it. And it's kind of a disappointment that Werner Herzog actually has committed to never making another 3D film again, because he found the 3D cameras so difficult to work with. I mean, look, the end result was wonderful, and it's absolutely stunning, and he made a strong case for why he made this with 3D, but it was such a hassle that he's never going to do it again. And I don't know if anyone's going to ever make a documentary in 3D again. I know Pino was a 3D documentary, but this was the one that really showed off the stuff. All right, next up we have a returning movie because this is still, a lot of people have not seen this in 3D, which is funny because it was sold as a 3D movie. It was from an Academy Award winning director, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, in fact, and that is Hugo. And the 3D absolutely stands up. I am very disappointed that Scorsese never really made another full-length 3D movie. I think he talked about making another movie in 3D, but for some reason it hasn't actually materialized for whatever reason. But Hugo showed that he knew what he was doing with the 3D. Like, he understood the concept of 3D, he understood what you could do with it, how the streets of Paris just come alive in this movie, and some of the dream sequences like are almost magical. And so Hugo stays on the list. Thankfully, this is not too difficult to get, but there you go. Now then, the next movie on the list, you would think wouldn't be on the list because I just got on a bunch of other movies' cases for being, taking place in space, like Independence Day, Resurgence, and how it darkened the image in the 3D. You couldn't really gauge it, but one filmmaker who figured out how to film a movie like that and make the 3D work was Alfonso Cuarón for Gravity. By the way, this movie won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Director, and it totally, you can totally understand why when you watch it in 3D. Like, I mean, first of all, obviously they didn't shoot this in space. They filmed a lot of it underwater actually, so that they could get like the weightlessness accurate on the picture. But the way they filmed it, like, it almost gives a sense of floating, like you're helplessly stranded in space. Like, Gravity is a very apt title for this because there really is none, and it just adds to how hopeless Sandra Bullock and George Clooney feel being stuck in space without anything to, you know, bring them down to earth. Like one little touch, like a little shove, if you would, could throw them out into the cold, empty vastness that is space. And this movie still holds up extremely well. The 3D holds up extremely well, so it returns on this list. Now, this next one is kind of unique because we actually have a 3-way tie. And you probably know what I'm doing because one of them's kind of a returning thing. It's How to Train Your Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon 2, and How to Train Your Dragon The Hidden World. Yeah, that Hidden World, that's what it's called. Now, why am I cheating and including 3 of them on one? Well, because for all intents and purposes, they're part of this. It's the same movie. I mean, they're all good in their own unique way, but it's a trilogy. It tells a complete story from boyhood to man, and the 3D in all of these are excellent. Now, there is a little bit of a standout with the first one because it was the first one they did, and the sequences of flight were especially impressive, but I can't say these ones are any worse. A note about this one, though, this is imported, and I believe it is region locked. So you do have to have a region-free player to play it, unfortunately. But, here's the thing. How to Train Your Dragon is what sold me on 3D, like what really, truly sold me on 3D. Yes, I saw Avatar first, and I loved Avatar, but when I saw How to Train Your Dragon, it was like, this is how you expand 3D. This is how you make 3D an immersive experience that makes you... I took people to see How to Train Your Dragon in IMAX 3D. I don't know how many people I brought to IMAX 3D to show them, and they all walked away like, how on earth? Like, whoa. Like, they were speechless. So, and the thing is, had 3D kind of hung around, I believe the 2 and 3 would have been 3D events because the 3D in the first one was so good. But by the time the third one came out, 3D was kind of a dying thing. And I remember it broke my heart when I saw that IMAX was showing it in just 2D. So I went to see it in 4DX, which was an interesting experience, if you will. All right, now we have a newcomer on the set. And This one actually surprised me how good it was in 3D, and it annoys me that that not a lot of people have seen it in 3D. And granted, I'm sure they think it's because it's a kids movie. I would argue it's not a kids movie. I would argue it's a teenager and adult movie that kids can enjoy. But that is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, you might have noticed this says a new universe. That's because this is an import. And because, of course, they didn't put it in America. And yes, that means that there's some foreign text in the movie itself, but I don't care because, oh my gosh. So here's the thing. The animation is clearly meant to look like the comic strip, so even though it's made with computer animation, it's made to look hand-drawn. And so you would think that that would be a huge knock against the 3D version of this movie, but it really is not. Because it is ultimately made with computers, that means that they can actually put better depth that does not stand out so much. And yeah, some of the, like, sound effect words and stuff like that obviously pop up and they look like pop-up books, but that doesn't matter. That kind of adds to the charm. And overall, the action sequences show great depth. It's masterfully done, really. And here's like kind of the amazing thing. This is a very fast-paced movie. Like like it just jumps all over the place, and normally that is not a good thing for 3D. If it moves too fast, then the 3D can get blurry or jilted or it can jump around. Not in the case of Into the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse handles it like a champ, and it's absolutely stunning, the end result. So, by the way, some people are asking, like, from the last one, like, what happened to The Amazing Spider-Man? Look, that one's still a great 3D movie too, but the thing is, it wasn't the greatest movie in the world, and it wasn't the worst movie in the world, so it didn't really fit on either one of my lists now that the collection has expanded. But I can definitely say, if you want your 3D Spider-Man fix, yes, that's also a good one, but make it a point to check this one out. Unfortunately, I do think this is region locked. Oh no, this is not region locked. It's not. It's region free. So yeah, if you can find this, enjoy it. You will not regret it, unless you just don't like Spider-Man movies. All right, let's look at another superhero movie. And here's the thing. I had to start making some compromises for this list. There were so many choices to make. And one of the things that should be noted is that Marvel movies, some of them have gotten very good in 3D. Now, Spider-Man's kind of in its own little universe, no pun intended, because Sony made that movie. It's not part of the MCU, but the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for those who are not aware for some reason, has made some very good 3D movies. And ultimately, there were like 4 movies that I would have liked to have included on the list, but we can't just have a list full of Marvel movies. Maybe we can make a separate Marvel movie list altogether on that one. And if you want to see that, comment below. But I decided to settle on one Marvel movie to put on the list, and I picked Doctor Strange. And this was actually not as easy to decide as you would think. In fact, the runner-up is going to be an honorable mention, just to let you all know. But Doctor Strange was pretty clearly the standout show, like especially the sequence with like the warping New York and like the moving, basically what Inception would look like if it was made by a Marvel director. Then that's where the 3D is just so good, and Doctor Strange really took advantage of the other dimensional quality and all that jazz. By the way, Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse Madness, whatever it's called, that's probably just as good as this. It's just not out yet, and I don't know if it's going to be out yet. But in the meantime, yeah, Doctor Strange is very easily the best Marvel movie in 3D. Although, again, there's another one that came very, very close, and we will talk about that. So, the last time I made a top 10 list, which was in 2018, I did put this movie on the list, but I actually put it higher on the list because of the quality of the movie itself. But by splitting the movies into 2 lists, like, the bad movies or mediocre movies and the good movies, I feel much more comfortable putting this one higher on the list now, because I don't think at all it's a bad movie, and that is Avatar. And of course, Avatar was going to remain on this list because it's Avatar, it's James Cameron, and this is what brought 3D back from the grave. Like, this is truly what brought it back. Everything about this was made in 3D. I mean, when you watch this movie in 3D, like, forget the, oh, it's Fern Gully meets Pocahontas. I acknowledge that it's not the greatest story, but it is one of the greatest movie experiences you will ever see. And in fact, here's probably the strongest argument. You know how I said earlier that if you have not seen these movies in 3D, then you probably have not seen the movie. Not really. Avatar is probably the best example of that because if you've seen this in 3D, you see a good movie. And if you see it in 2D, you're not seeing as good of a movie. And I think everyone is willing to admit that at this point. So obviously Avatar had to remain on the list. Now, I struggled with this one a little bit because this director actually made 3 movies that were strong contenders to be on the list. And I decided, as one of my arbitrary rules, you know what, if the guy is the same director, we got to just pick one. And I settled on The Walk. This doesn't sound like it would be a very good 3D movie, but you know, I'm going to share a story. I don't know if I shared this last time, but when I had a friend who bought a 3D TV and I used to go over to their house all the time and bring movies, they said, hey, we got a 3D TV, bring over your best 3D movie. And I brought this movie. And they were a little disappointed. They thought I'd bring Avatar or something like that. Now, I brought other 3D movies later on down the road because we might as well enjoy them, right? But I brought this one because it's like, first of all, I know you haven't seen it because this was a big bomb, but it's also going to show that 3D can work for movies that are not action-oriented. This is about a guy who wants to do a tightrope walk across the World Trade Center towers. And obviously, when the walk happens itself, the 3D will definitely give you a sense of like, oh, whoa, like vertigo. Like, I saw this in IMAX 3D and it was like, jeez. I actually had to close my eyes a couple times, and that's how good the 3D was. And, you know, I kind of wish this was more successful because this is something that we really didn't get much more of afterwards, in the sense that we got a 3D movie that was geared for adults, that was not an action movie, and hey, it was also rated PG. It wasn't PG-13, you know, so in a sense, the whole family could see it if you wanted, but I guess the subject matter just didn't ring a bell with people or something, so it was a bomb. But thankfully, it was released on Blu-ray 3D, and I think you can see that. You can see the guy walking across. It's kind of a cool effect. But yeah, if you have a 3D TV and you have not seen this in 3D, this is pretty high on there. Now then, we do have a new movie on the list, and I am so glad that James Cameron fought to get this released on Blu-ray 3D. Now, some of you might be going, wait a minute, James Cameron, didn't you already have Avatar on there? Ha ha ha, I did. But he technically didn't direct this movie. He produced it, so I get to add it. And that is Alita Battle Angel. Like, oh my gosh, 3D has advanced so much. You watch this, and look, I know a lot of the movies on this list are old movies. Like, they were on the other list, so I get that. Some of you might even think to a certain extent this list is a waste of time. But Alita showed, like, just how good 3D has come. Like, how far it's come, I should say. Because, you know, we saw it in IMAX 3D, and it was like, my goodness, the depth there. And then I even ended up seeing it on, like, a regular 3D screen, and the depth was beyond comprehension. And then when you brought it at home, it was amazing. Now, thankfully, unlike many titles on this video, this is pretty easy to find because James Cameron said that 3D is the intended way to see it, and he made sure that it was included in the Ultra HD combo pack. In fact, you can even see it advertises the 3D as a special feature, and that is their way of saying, hey, the 3D version is the way you watch Alita. Like, this is an admission that you need to watch it in 3D. Now, of course, there is a little caveat on this one, in the sense that we have no idea if a sequel is going to be made. And unfortunately, it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and I'm not the biggest fan of that mindset where you make part one and you have a cliffhanger, and then hopefully part two will get made. And it's especially frustrating because this one's actually pretty good. So you want to see a sequel, but Disney bought Fox, and I don't think they're interested in this, so we're probably not going to get a sequel. On the other hand, if you want to go out and buy it, it's very easy to buy it, and if this thing continues to sell, who knows? Maybe we'll one day get a sequel to Alita. All right, now then, before we go to the number one choice, the best Blu-ray 3D that I have that's good, let's look at some honorable mentions, and I've got a lot of them. I've got a lot of them. And keep in mind, like, see this? See this? Like, my goodness. We probably should have just made this a top 20 list. Maybe we'll do that again in a couple years. But here's some honorable mentions. Okay, this had to be an honorable mention because there's no way you can buy it. This is a tech demo disc that was used to display 3D TVs using Disney previews and all that jazz. Now, why is this an honorable mention? Well, because it has some shorts on here that you can only get on 3D on this demo disc, and they were vintage shorts that were in 3D. They were displayed in 3D years ago, and for this sample disc, they brought them back, but they couldn't think to put them on any of the Disney Blu-ray 3Ds, so I have to make special mention of that. Another one I have to make special mention of is Harlock Space Pirate 3D. This is a CGI movie based on the Captain Harlock anime series. And oh, what do you know? Our buddy James Cameron, he's bragging about it. And this is really good 3D. It almost made the cut on the top 10 list. So why didn't it make the top 10 list? Well, I don't know if you can actually see it down there, but they only made 3,500 copies of this. So that makes it extremely difficult to find, extremely expensive, and I was like, I guess I'd rather promote titles that you technically can still get. A movie that I took off the list, but I want to still give it its due, Tron Legacy 3D. I do enjoy this movie, and by the way, this is still one of the best examples of using 3D as a storytelling device in how it switches from 2D to 3D, but I do think other titles have since improved upon the method, so that's why it kind of got moved off the list. I also moved The Adventures of Tintin off the list, even though it was super good, and it's not like it aged poorly. I just wanted to shake up the list a little bit more. Now then, let's talk about the next two movies. The Walk that I talked about, that was a Robert Zemeckis film. Because I could only pick one Robert Zemeckis film, I had to take The Polar Express off the list, and I couldn't quite include A Christmas Carol either. These are still extremely great 3D experiences. By the way, this has the added advantage of having the 3D be on the 2D disc, so whether you have a 3D TV or not, it will sense whether you have a 3D TV, and if it senses it, it will say, hey, do you want to watch it in 3D? And if it doesn't sense you have a 3D TV, it'll just play it in 2D, so anyone can buy this one. I really wish they had done more with that feature, because I think that would have helped 3D adaptation. The 3D is on its own disc, but there's a lot of these out there, so these are easy to get. But yeah, Robert Zemeckis, this guy knows what he's doing with 3D. I also want to give lip service to Frozen, still the best 3D animated movie Disney has produced. That said, again, there are other movies that have come out that are a little better, but I do want to give Frozen its due. And now for that Marvel movie that it came very close to, Ant-Man. And I do think that Doctor Strange technically did have better 3D, but that said, Ant-Man did some really funny things with 3D. It kind of reminded me of when I first saw Ghostbusters, and the special effects might not have been the best. They definitely had aged by the time I saw it, but they were used so cleverly that you didn't care. And I kind of feel that way with Ant-Man. Like, not all the 3D effects are perfect, but they are used in such a clever way that I have to make mention of it. And by the way, this Steelbook edition is extremely hard to find now and very expensive, unfortunately. And finally, as our last honorable mentions, I picked on poor Shrek enough in the other movie. So even if these are not the absolute best Blu-ray 3Ds you're going to get, first of all, Puss in Boots is very good in 3D. It might not be one of the best, but it's very, very good. And Shrek Forever After, guess what? This is good in 3D. The 3D has a lot of depth. It pops. It looks natural. The only reason it's not on the list is because Shrek Forever After was kind of one of those unique situations where it's like, yes, the 3D is nice and it's there and it's very good, but it's not necessary. If you watch it in 2D, you're going to be getting the exact same experience for the most part. Puss in Boots, by the way, is a better experience in 3D, but again, if you take away the 3D, it's still fine. All right, so now the number one best 3D Blu-ray that I have, and it's actually a repeat of the list I made all those years ago in 2018. Is that 2018 all those years ago? We'll just say it is, and that is Ang Lee's Life of Pi. This is the movie that should have won Best Picture that year. No offense to Argo. I don't know what I can say about this that I haven't said before. Life of Pi is pure beauty. Like, I don't know if it is a way to film spirituality. It probably is. It's impossible. Like, the spirit and a connection with God, I don't know if you can ever truly visualize it in a way that could ever comprehensively show what it's like to have a personal connection with God. But my goodness, Life of Pi came very, very close. I don't know. Maybe it's not even very close. Maybe it was just as close as we've ever gotten before. But my goodness, you watch this movie and you feel things. You feel things in your soul almost as you watch this movie. And the 3D is a large part of it. Like, not only does it highlight the isolation of being on a boat in the middle of the ocean, but like when he's looking in the stars or in the sea, the images are so beautiful. It is absolutely breathtaking how good the 3D in this movie is. And you know, this movie's just, it's tragic with this movie all around. It didn't do very well at the box office. It came up just short of winning Best Picture. And the visual effects creators, the people who helped make this 3D experience as good as it is, they went out of business a day or two after winning the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. It's an absolute shame. But this remains the best Blu-ray 3D I have, not only for its technicality, but for the story it's telling with the 3D. And here's the thing. This movie is good enough that if you can't see it in 3D, see it in 2D. It's still a wonderful movie. But if you see it in 3D, get ready. You are about to see something that you will probably never see again. And that is my updated top 10 best Blu-ray 3Ds that I own. Now, we might update this list every couple of years at this point. Who knows? Do you want to see that? I would love to know, so comment below. And what about your collection? Do you agree with any of these choices? Did I miss something? Or do you think that some of these should not have been on here? Again, would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.